Field note number 36, From Puppy Kisses to Kitty Purrs. Where does safety governance live in professional pet sitting? Field check. 8 quick yes and no questions before you read. Your responses are going to help shape the future of field notes on safety governance, and they're important feedback. Now let's get into the read. And yes, you're going to hear a cat meowing in the background. That is my production assistant, Sooty. When you look back and read my earliest field notes, you might notice something. There is a small thread running through them. At first, it looks like nothing more than a loose piece of string, the kind that appears in quiet reflections about presence, boundaries, or the small decisions we make during a shift. But over time, that string keeps unwinding. In one essay, it shows up as a moment in a hallway with a defensive cat named Norman, a cardboard tray in my hand, and a growl at the top of the stairs, and a quiet calculation whether the work should continue. In another, it appears as a realization that pet sitters do not actually sell minutes. We sell outcomes. If that remains true, then minutes are administrative scheduling. They're not marketing points. The moment when a nervous cat finally eats, it's the moment that a dog settles. It's the moment when a client breathes again because they know things are truly okay because it was never about minutes anyway. At a time, those pieces felt like reflections about care. You may have never realized they were also reflections about safety governance. Because long before I ran a pet sitting business, I spent years writing risk assessments for crews heading into environments most of you will never see, places where lives and work hinged on how well a safety plan was written, understood, and implemented. Places where a worker saying, "no," really was a complete sentence between life and death. The question was always simpler. Did the outcome remain safe? That mindset doesn't disappear when you change professions. It follows you quietly into new work. And when you apply the same lens to pet sitting and dog walking, something unexpected happens. The work begins to reveal itself differently. A visit is no longer just a scheduled time of block. A visit is no longer a scheduled block of time. It becomes an evaluation of conditions. The pet that needs 5 minutes extra, or a cat that's happy you leave after 20 minutes. The environment that remains calm and unchaotic, and a pet sitter or dog walker who can responsibly and tell responsibly when all those conditions change. The interaction between all three. In order for that work to continue, you, the business owner, needs a governance framework. Outcome-based care, I've come to realize, is simply risk assessment wearing a softer sweater. Puppy kisses and kitty purrs. When we, as pet sitting business owners, set aside the puppy kisses and kitty purrs, we begin evaluating the work. Many of us already have pieces of a formal structure, a workers' compensation manual sitting on a shelf, maybe something your attorney helped assemble, maybe a safety statement buried in an HR handbook. Those documents matter. But governance doesn't really live in a binder. It lives in the moment you step into a situation and start asking yourself the questions that determine whether the work should proceed at all. It might live in your meet and greet paperwork or in your pet sitting app. Governance isn't the binder on the shelf. It's the moment a pet sitter stands in a doorway and quietly asks, "Do the conditions in front of me meet the conditions my business agreed to are safe?" Last year, I wrote about one of those moments In field note number 7, Storm and Norman. Norman wasn't subtle about his feelings. Hisses, growls, a hallway standoff that left me holding a cardboard food tray like a makeshift riot shield while I calculated my next move. It may have looked like an ordinary cat-sitting assessment visit from the outside. Do enough cat visits, and you know cats will always change the rules for you. Inside my head, though, a completely different process was running. Risk assessment, threshold evaluation, decision authority. Years earlier, I had written risk assessments for crews working around tetrachloroethylene being pumped into 55-gallon drums. In the wrong conditions, the vapor could knock a worker unconscious in minutes. You respected the hazard, you monitored the air, and never assumed the environment was safe simply because it looked quiet. Standing in that suburban hallway, the same reflex surfaced again. The hazard wasn't solvent vapor this time. It had whiskers, claws, and a set of teeth. An aggressive animal can be just as volatile as chemical fumes. The warning signs are different, but the rule is the same. If you ignore the signals, the environment can turn on you faster than you expect. Not minutes, outcomes. Was the situation safe to proceed? Was the animal defensive or truly dangerous? Could the work be done without escalating the situation? And most importantly, was this a job that could be delegated to someone else? If I scaled my business, even adding just one other person, would they be able to do the visits with Norman? That last question is where governance begins to appear. Why this is so difficult for pet sitters? Because our work is wrapped in affection and relationships. Puppy kisses, kitty purrs, the quiet intimacy of caring for animals inside someone's home. Those things are real, and they matter deeply because they also soften the edges of the work in a way that can make it harder to recognize the structural responsibilities underneath it. We rarely think of ourselves as operating inside a workplace safety system, and yet every day we walk into environments we did not design. We handle animals we did not raise, administer medications we did not prescribe, and make decisions without immediate supervision. Each visit asks us to evaluate conditions, recognize thresholds, and decide whether the work can be safely continued. In other professions, those judgments are called risk assessments. In pet sitting, we often call it instinct. But instinct is rarely just instinct. It is experience. It is pattern recognition, and it is professional judgment quietly doing their work in the background. Outcome-based care gives that judgment a name. Governance and the safety policies you set give it structure for yourself and for your team. Reflection questions. When you walk into a client's home, what are you actually evaluating besides the tasks and the visit schedule? Are you noticing the conditions, thresholds, and subtle changes, or simply completing the scheduled routine? Think back to a moment when your instincts told you something wasn't right during a visit. What signals did you notice? And how did you decide whether the situation was safe to continue? If a sitter on your team encountered a situation like Storm and Norman, would they know where their safety threshold was? And would they feel supported in honoring it? What decisions in your business are currently made in the moment that might benefit from a written policy instead of improvisation? When you think about professionalism in pet sitting, do you measure it primarily by time served or by the outcomes and conditions you leave behind in the homes you visit. That's it for this week, and we'll see you next Sunday.